like to share? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shauna Cooper, and I'm the Director of Programs at Ribbon. Today, we have a great session for you on people living with HIV who are considered working. This presentation is brought to you in partnership with the National Working Positive Coalition and Ribbon. I'm going to turn the webinar over to Vanessa, who's the co-executive director of Ribbon, and she's going to get us started. Thank you. Vanessa.
Hey, thanks, Shauna, and welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We're so excited. One of my good friends is going to be presenting.
Did we lose Vanessa?
Vanessa, you're muted.
Oh, see, I'm told you my computer I gotta keep my fingers away from the pad. Thank you, you all. So I'm going to say once more that I'm really happy to be introducing Sylvester Askins Jr. What I'm going to do is put on the screen. I'm going to put up the first slide, Sylvester, and then I'm going to introduce you, and then you'll take it away. And I will be forwarding the slide, so you'll hear Sylvester say next slide. Okay, let me just, let me do that right now. Make sure you all can see my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you all. So today's session is long-term HIV survival and work. What are my options? And today's presenter is Sylvester Askins Jr., and he's the training director for the National Working Positive Coalition, an organization which is near and dear to my heart because I have been serving on that board of directors for over 10 years, and I'm currently the board chair of the organization. And I talk about working. This organization went from an all-volunteer board to a board that now, to an organization that now has 3 full-time staff members and 1 part-time staff member. And the beautiful thing about these 4 individuals is that they're all people living with HIV. So I tend to think that they know what they're talking about when they're talking about going back to work and going back to work in a way that's satisfying for individuals. So let me tell you a little bit about Sylvester before he starts. He has been living with HIV for 33 years, and he joined the NWPC staff, which is the National Working Positive Coalition, after serving as the Director of Health Programs at the Urban League of Hampton Roads, where he oversaw a Ryan White program. He is also he's also the founder and CEO of Moving Forward Consulting, which was established to assist people living with HIV in assessing the informations and resources they need to make informed decisions about reaching their employment goals and obtaining long-term economic security. Before that, Sylvester worked at Independence, not Independence, but END Dependence Center, a center of independent living in Norfolk, Virginia. And he coordinated the Ticket to Work program that's funded by the Social Security Administration. And I think I have said enough because I could go on and on and on about this gentleman. But I'm so glad that you are giving him your time and attention. It is definitely worthwhile. I'm going to turn it over to Sylvester. Sylvester, just let Shauna and I know if you need anything, okay?
All right. Thank you so much, my dear friend Vanessa, and good afternoon, everybody. I want to start off by saying a very special thank you to Shauna and Vanessa and everybody at Ribbon for giving National Working Positive Coalition the opportunity to join you today to share some very, very vital information that can be life-changing. The session today will provide an overview of key information on interactions for people living with HIV of work earnings and vital public benefits programs. The physical, mental, and economic health and well-being of people living with HIV can benefit from access to cash benefits, housing supports, and healthcare and medication coverage, as well as engagement in employment. This training will increase participants' ability to make well-informed decisions considering work, health, and the quality of life. Again, my name is Sylvester Askins Jr., and I serve as the training director for the National Working Positive Coalition. As Vanessa said, I'm also a long-term survivor who's navigated many of the programs and policies we'll discuss today in my own employment journey. I greatly appreciate you all for joining us today to learn more about the interactions of work earnings and public benefits for people living with HIV. Quite honestly, I'm grateful that you all have chosen to better understand this information with the potential of contributing meaningfully to enhance the health and quality of life for yourself and or people you work with. In today's webinar, I will provide an overview of some key information to understand how people living with HIV can prioritize their access to healthcare and medication, their housing, and overall economic stability, and pursue self-determined goals to engage in employment. This next statement is very, very important. I encourage you each not to expect to become a benefits specialist or expert from this training, but rather to benefit from a better general understanding of both the challenges and opportunities for employment for people living with HIV and resources for additional information and advisement. Before I go any further, I just want to go ahead and share with you that you guys will know that you will notice that the information that I'm providing is scripted. And the reason why is because this information is very, very dense and it can be very, very overwhelming. And I want to make the best of the time that we have together today. So I've chosen to do it this way so that I give you guys the best and the most amount of information in the time that we have together. Vanessa, next slide, please. Thank you. My objectives in presenting this webinar are for people living with HIV participating in this webinar to first be able to identify the key public benefits programs whose policies regarding impacts of work earnings are most important to people living with HIV for making well-informed decisions about employment. Second, to be able for you to recall important differences between the work earnings related policies, also known as work incentive policies, of the SSI and SSDI programs of the Social Security Administration. And third, to be able to understand some of the valuable strategies for continuing Medicaid and or Medicare health coverage, even if Social Security cash payments stop due to earnings. Next slide, please. In today's webinar, after the introductory slides, the topics will focus on interactions between work earnings and public benefits, including income and safety net programs that many people living with HIV are enrolled in, including SSI, SSDI, and HOPWA. We'll review policies related to work earnings for key programs, providing coverage for access to health care and medications, including Medicaid and Medicare. We'll then wrap up with a brief overview of vital resources for people living with HIV related to employment and a short list of links for key additional resources for benefits and employment information. Next slide. We present this webinar today in hopes that it will provide a vital foundation for the engagement of people living with HIV and others working with people living with HIV considering employment. The public benefits programs that many people living with HIV are enrolled in have been essential for many of us to achieve basic economic and housing stability, and to access health coverage for medical care and our medications. They may have made our ability to consider employment possible, and it's only rational to be cautious, thoughtful, and well-informed in making employment choices that could impact access to these very vital resources. It's critical to understand that each of these programs have their own eligibility criteria and policies related to work earnings, which are often called work incentives. Since the very beginning of the HIV epidemic, very few people living with HIV and enrolled in public benefits programs have had the opportunity for understanding the key work incentive policies for their individual benefits and consideration of potential employment options. We'll talk today about how we can collaboratively improve on this history. Next slide, please. Now, let's zoom in for some close-ups on key income and housing safety net programs that many people living with HIV currently rely on, and explore how increasing income with work earnings may interact with enrollment in them. Next slide. Thank you. We're going to start with a look at the primary income and housing safety net programs that many people living with HIV are enrolled in, and their important policies related to work earnings. The two cash benefit programs of Social Security for people with disabilities provide essential economic support for many people living with HIV across the country. SSI, or Supplemental Security Income, provides monthly cash payments for people they define as aged, blind, or disabled who have low income and low resources. SSDI, or Social Security Disability Income, provides larger cash payments for people with disabilities who are eligible based on having worked long enough, usually 40 quarters or more. Another key economic stability program important to consider is HOPWA, the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS Housing Assistance Program for people living with HIV and AIDS. Next slide, please. Among the key work incentive policies for the SSI program we'll spotlight are the Earned Income Exclusion, both Section 1619A and Section 1619B, and the Expedited Reinstatement Policy for SSI beneficiaries. And we'll go on to the next slide. Let's take a look at how the basic calculation of work earnings and benefits works for SSI beneficiaries, beginning with the Earned Income Exclusion. Social Security doesn't count the first $65 of work earnings in a month and doesn't count one out of every $2 or half of the remaining work earnings in that month. The total amount this earned income exclusion is added to the $20 general income exclusion applied to any unearned income received. In most cases, the $65 and the $25, totaling $85, is deducted from almost all SSI beneficiaries' income each month in calculations related to their work earnings to determine their countable income. In this scenario, an SSI beneficiary, here named Tyler, receives $463 in gross work earnings in a month. Deducting that $84 from Tyler's work earnings of $463 results in $378. Then deducting one out of every $2 of that $378 of remaining work earnings equals $189, or half of the remaining earnings. That amount of $189 is the total countable work earnings for calculation of Tyler's SSI cash payment for that month, considering work earnings. And now we'll go on to the next slide. We are now seeing that Tyler's SSI cash benefit is $914 for 2023. Tyler earned $463 from work this month, so deducting that $85 resulted in $378. Deducting $189, or half of the remaining earnings, leaves a total of $189 to be reduced from Tyler's monthly cash payment of $914. This results in an SSI cash payment of $725 for that month. The $463 in work earnings and the SSI cash payment of $725 totals $1,188 of income for Tyler during the month. This is an increase of $274 over Tyler's usual cash income of $914 from SSI. This is a little less than a 30% increase in income for Tyler that month. However, this calculation does not take into account standard payroll deductions that would reduce the cash income that Tyler would receive. Under Social Security's Section 1619A policy, for every month that Tyler works and receives at least $1 of SSI cash payment, Tyler will continue to have his Medicaid coverage. Next slide, please. So now let's talk for a moment about Section 1619B, which is the policy which allows for people to continue Medicaid coverage even when their work earnings completely zero out their SSI cash payments. Eligibility under Section 1619B to continue Medicaid requires continuing to meet Social Security's definition of disability, having been eligible for SSI cash payments for at least 1 month before payments stopped, meeting other SSI requirements such as resource limits and redeterminations, and needing Medicaid benefits to continue to work. So this information is usually very state specific. And today I'm going to use in the numbers and the eligibility and thresholds amount, I'm going to use the state of New York as an example. So for example, in New York State, the earnings threshold for section 1619B in 2023 is $52,286. This will be different in your individual states, and I'll give you some information towards the end as to how to find these amounts for your particular states. Next slide, please, Vanessa. Under the expedited reinstatement policy for SSI, an SSI beneficiary can move back and forth between receiving SSI cash payments with Medicaid and not receiving cash payments with continuation of Medicaid coverage under Section 1619B with no limit, even when no longer receiving an SSI cash payment. Also, the expedited reinstatement policy allows a person who has become ineligible for their SSI cash payments and Medicaid because of their earnings to apply for reinstatement of those benefits if they again become eligible because their earnings ended or are being reduced. This opportunity to apply for reinstatement of benefits is available within 60 months or 5 years of having become ineligible for them. Within this 60-month period, this is really, really important. They will not have to go through a completely new SSI application process. And for anybody on this webinar who's been through the whole disability process, you know it's long and belaboring. And so this is a wonderful incentive that if you reapply within those 60 months, you don't have to go through that process all over again. Next slide, please, Vanessa. Okay, so moving from SSI over to the SSDI work incentives, we'll see that they are very different. The SSDI work incentives that we'll look at include the trial work period, or TWP, the extended period of eligibility, or EPE, the substantial gainful activity, or SGA, and the expedited reinstatement, or EXR policies. Next slide, please. The trial work period policy only applies to SSDI beneficiaries, allowing them the opportunity to try working across 9 months within a rolling 60-month or 5-year period. Each of the 9 months are considered as a trial work month when an SSDI beneficiary earns over $1,050 in gross payments that month. And this amount is only good for 2023. This amount changes every year, and the new figures will come out at the beginning of January. During each of the 9 trial work period months, an SSDI beneficiary can earn any amount of money and still receive their full SSDI cash payment. Next slide. I'm going to talk about the EPE. After completion of the 9th month of the SSDI beneficiary's trial work period, the extended period of eligibility, or EPE, begins. The extended period of eligibility is a consecutive 36-month period during which Social Security will again issue a beneficiary's SSDI cash payment for any month when their earnings are not at that SGA level or substantial gainful activity level. For 2023, the substantial gainful activity level amount is $1,470 for non-blind beneficiaries and $2,460 for blind beneficiaries. This amount will also change at the beginning of the year. In the very first month after completion of the 9-month trial work period, if the SSDI beneficiary earns the substantial gainful activity amount, they will also receive their full SSDI cash payment for that month and will again for the next 2 consecutive months. And this period is called the grace period. When the 36-month extended period of eligibility ends, cash payments will stop if work earnings meet the SGA level. And let's go on to the next slide, Vanessa. Expedited reinstatement is the safety net policy for SSDI beneficiaries after their cash benefits end because of work. The SSDI beneficiary makes less money if the SSDI beneficiary makes less money or stops working because of their disability. Social Security may be able to restart the benefits if their earnings are no longer above that SGA level, their disability is the same or is related to their current disability, and they request to restart their SSDI cash payments within 60 months or 5 years of when their benefits ended. Next slide, please. We're now going to move from cash income benefits to housing benefits with a look at the HOPWA program. HOPWA, which stands for the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, is the only federal program specifically focused on addressing the housing needs of people living with HIV and AIDS. Now, typically, when a participating HOPWA subsidy tenant has an increase in their monthly income, their tenant share goes up, generally $1 for every $3 of additional income. However, under the Earned Income Disregard Work Incentive Policy, HOPWA Housing Subsidy Program participants are allowed to work without an immediate increase in their contribution to rent. For instance, in the first 12 months of new work earnings, all or 100% of their work earnings are totally disregarded in calculations of contributions they're required to make toward their rent. In the second 12 months of working, half or 50% of their new work earnings are disregarded in the calculation of contributions they're required to make towards their rent. To be eligible for the Earned Income Disregard Work Incentive, the HOPWA subsidy program participant must have been unemployed for at least 1 year prior to the new employment. And before we move on, just one caveat about the HOPWA program. We found out recently that the earned income disregard portion of HOPWA is going to be sunsetting as of December 31st of this year. However, anyone who's thinking of going back to work and who will get into the program before December 31st will still have these 2 years available to them where they don't have to pay full contributions for their rent. We heard from HUD on Tuesday, and they still have not settled on what will replace this particular incentive. I just want to say that I took part in this program in 2013, and it was a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to see if I was going to be able to go back to work and continue to work. And I'm happy to say, after about 2.5 years, I was able to work my way off of the HOPWA program. So I'm really sad to see this going away. And as we look at today's times, I can't say what's going to happen, but I'm a little bit doubtful that what comes behind this will be as beneficial for us as this particular work incentive has been. Let's move on to the next slide, please. All right. So now it's your turn to take part. I know this has been a lot of very detailed information that I've given you guys so far. So I would encourage you to take 5 or 10 seconds just to stretch or stand up for a second, take a deep breath. And then we're going to have a quick question for everybody to consider. So let's take about 10 seconds just to regroup and get a breath or take a sip of water. Okay. So we know it can be overwhelming for people living with HIV to consider making changes in their life, to participate in employment and increase your income when it's so complicated to understand what will happen and how it could all work out. Most definitely, one of the most important areas of information to understand for people living with HIV is how we can be assured of at least maintaining, if not improving, our health insurance coverage and our access to our medications. To that end, I now ask you to consider this question. What I'm going to do, I'm going to read the question, and I'm going to ask you guys to put your responses in the chat. And I'll ask Vanessa and Shauna to keep an eye on the chat to see how it's going. So the question is, how long can people who receive SSI and or SSDI benefits keep their Medicaid and or Medicare health coverage after starting work, even if their SSI and or SSDI cash payments stop? That's a mouthful. So let's go ahead and put your answers in the chat, and we'll take about 10 seconds for everybody to have the opportunity to be able to participate. I see some answers coming in. Thank you very much for everybody who's participating. I see some good answers coming in. Oh, wow. All right.
Oh, people are paying attention.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. I'm happy
Wonderful.
about that. Going to give it about 10 or 12 more seconds for anybody who would like to have the opportunity to chime in. Also, I'm going to just take a second. Is there anybody who wants to come off mute and share their answer? The responses have kind of slowed down, so I'm going to give it 5 or 6 more seconds, just in case there's somebody who's still contemplating what they think the best answer might be.
Oh, y'all are still going. Good,
Mm-hmm.
good.
Thanks to everyone who's participating.
I think Jeanette is the last one. Jeanette.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to read the question again. And the question is, how long can people who receive SSI and or SSDI benefits keep their Medicaid and or Medicare health coverage after starting work, even if their SSI and or SSDI cash payments stop? So the choices are A, 36 months, B, 93 months, or C, indefinitely as if eligible. I saw quite a few responses. Most of them were C, indefinitely if eligible, and that is correct. I can share that I took part in this particular work incentive also. I went the whole 93 months and then another few years after that. So this is a really wonderful work incentive, because one of the really, really important things for us as people living with HIV is that we always, always, always need to have access to healthcare professionals and for our medication. So I'm really, really grateful for this particular work incentive. Let's go to the next slide, Vanessa. Okay. After moving in for some close-ups on income and housing safety net programs, let's shift to key programs that many people living with HIV are currently relying on for healthcare and access to their medications. We will especially look at how increasing income with work earnings may interact with enrollment in these programs. As we look at work incentive policies for programs providing coverage for health care and medication, we'll focus on policies for continuing coverage through Medicaid, through Medicare, and ADAP. Next slide, please.
You want me to go further than this?
Yeah, go to the next one.
Okay.
Okay, great. Let's talk about policies that allow people living with HIV who work to continue their eligibility for Medicaid, beginning with Section 1619B, which we touched on earlier. And here you'll see I am using an example for eligibility and amount for New York State. Section 1619B allows continued Medicaid eligibility for SSI beneficiaries who are working with earnings too high to qualify for cash payments, but not high enough to offset the loss of Medicaid. Eligibility includes continuing to meet the Social Security definition of disability, having been eligible for an SSI cash payment for at least 1 month prior to those cash payments stopping, and meeting other SSI requirements, such as resource limits and redeterminations, and needing Medicaid benefits to be able to continue to work. And let's be honest, most of us will continue to need our Medicaid benefits to be able to work. And we're using a New York example here. So for example, in New York, continued Medicaid eligibility set for 2023 includes work earnings as high as $286. And let's go to the next slide. Another program, the Medicaid buy-in program, allows for people with disabilities earning higher incomes to continue Medicaid coverage. Let's continue with the look at eligibility for Medicaid buy-in in the program using New York as an example. Next slide, please. Moving over to look at Medicare, the key work incentive policies allowing for continuation of Medicare when SSDI beneficiaries are working are some we've touched on already, including the trial work period and the extended period of eligibility. We'll also discuss continuation of Medicare coverage, Medicare for people with disabilities who work, and qualified disabling working individual Medicare premium assistance. I'll say that again. We'll also discuss continuation of Medicare coverage, Medicare for people with disabilities who work, and qualified disabled working individual Medicare premium assistance. Let's go to the next slide. As I mentioned earlier, there are 9 months available over a 5-year period in an SSDI beneficiary's trial work period when they can work with no limits on income while continuing to get their full SSDI cash payment, and also they will continue their Medicare. In 2023, a month with gross earnings more than $1,050 counts as a trial work period month, and gross earnings less than $1,050 does not use one of the 9 trial work period months. So I see we're pretty good on time. I want to stop here for a second and see if there's anyone who has a question at this time.
If you do, please raise your hand because I can't see you. Thank you. I think we're okay.
Okay, all right. Let's go to the next slide, please. All right. I also discussed the 36-month extended period of eligibility, which begins after the 9th trial work period month, whether the individual is working or not, during which eligibility for Medicare will continue. At the end of the 36 months of the EPE, eligibility for Medicare will continue if the individual is eligible for their SSDI payment. If cash payments stop, the SSDI beneficiary may be eligible for extended Medicare, also known as continuation of Medicare coverage. Next slide. Continuation of Medicare coverage, or extended Medicare, allows most SSDI beneficiaries to continue Medicare coverage after the end of their 9-month trial work period, even if cash payments stop for 93 months, which is 7 years and 9 months, and beyond that in some instances. This applies if the individual is already enrolled in Medicare and is working at or above substantial gainful activity, or SGA. As a reminder, SGA is set for 2023 at $1,470 a month for non-blind SSDI beneficiaries and $2,460 a month for blind SSDI beneficiaries. Eligibility may also include continuing to meet the Social Security disability standard. Next slide. If an SSDI beneficiary completes use of the full 93 months of access to Medicare beyond their 9-month trial work period through the continuation of Medicare coverage policy, they may still be eligible to continue their enrollment in Medicare. The Medicare for People with Disabilities Who Work policy allows beneficiaries who've completed their 93 months of extended Medicare to enroll in Medicare Part A premium hospital insurance, as well as Part B supplemental medical insurance. And this is the one that I took advantage of. Eligibility requires that SSDI cash payments have ended because of substantial gainful activity and not medical improvement, and that the individual continues to be determined to be disabled. Next slide, please. So this is a really important slide because many people living with HIV are at retirement age or are approaching retirement age. So if you're younger than your full retirement age, there's a limit on how much you can earn and still receive your full Social Security benefits. If you're younger than full retirement age during all of 2023, Social Security will deduct $1 from your benefits for each $2 you earn over $21,240. If you reach full retirement age during 2023, Social Security will deduct $1 from your benefits from each $3 you earn above $56,520 until the month you reach your full retirement age. Something else that's important to know for anybody who's currently on Social Security disability and you're approaching your full retirement age, your Social Security disability, your SSDI disability benefit will automatically convert to Social Security retirement, and you will continue to get the same amount each month. That does not change. So this brings the question, next slide, please, Vanessa. When can I retire? You know, for so many years, 65 was that magic number. But here you see a breakdown by birth year as to when people can retire. So long story short, anybody born 1960 and after your full retirement age won't be until you're 67 years old. One nice little nugget about retirement, especially if you choose to retire early at age 65, you're gonna lose about 25 to 30% of what your benefit would be at full retirement age. And that percentage goes down a little bit each year until you reach full retirement age. For instance, I was born in 1955, so my full retirement age was 66 and 2 months. But like many of us living with HIV, especially us long-term survivors from the 80s and 90s, we didn't think that we were going to live, so we did not prepare for retirement. So even though, yes, I enjoy my work that I do, but I also need to continue to work and able to continue to be able to take care of myself, excuse me. Next slide, please. So now let's look at some resources and information for navigating some interactions. Next slide. Okay, here you see a list of links. I want to thank you all for joining us, and we'll be sharing 2 slides with links to resources related to our presentation or additional information. We have included the link for the Social Security's Red Book Online, which is often referred to as the Bible for information about the work incentive policies for SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, and Medicare. There's a link for the Senior Community Service Employment Program, or CSEP, and a link to Getting to Work, a national online training on employment and employment services for HIV and housing service providers. Next and final slide, please, Vanessa. Here we see the American Job Centers, which is they are located in every state across the country. They may not be called American Job Centers in your state. It could be called Job One. It could be a variety of names. But if you go to this link, you can find what they are in your local city. The second one is to find your local district offices for vocational rehabilitation. And the third is to view your local ticket to work providers. And finally, the last one is to find your local centers for independent living. Centers for independent living are truly an underutilized resource. When I worked in the Ticket to Work program, our program was housed in a center for independent living. And it was very alarming to me that very few people in the area that I live in were coming in for services. I only remember there being maybe three people over the course of my time there who actually came in, who identified as living with HIV, who took advantage of the services for the Centers for Independent Living. Another vital thing about Centers for Independent Living, they also have the ability to be able to help with housing. And sometimes people, especially when individuals are looking for public housing or who are looking to get on choice voucher rolls or Section 8 rolls, but many times those roles are closed. But in most instances, Centers for Independent Living will get the information that they're about to open early. Many times those applications have to be done online. However, it has been my experience that the counselors at the Centers for Independent Living can get paper copies of those applications. The counselors can assist you with filling out those applications, and many times they can also ensure that they get dropped off at the correct agency. So this is the end of the slides that I have. I want to ask again if anybody has any questions about anything that I've shared today.
I do. I have a question.
Oh, great, Danny, go ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was on SSDI from 1998 to 2020 when I turned 66. And I went to Social Security retirement. Medi-Cal, I'm on Medi-Medi, so straight Medi-Medi, no Advantage plan. Medi-Cal pays my premium for Medicare. If I go back to work, and I have no share of cost on Medi-Cal, if I go back to work, how much can I earn before they take away paying for that premium for Medicare and before I lose the no share of cost?
So that's going to depend on your state. Each state has a different threshold. I would encourage you to reach out to someone locally to get that specific info, because you said you're in California, right?
Yes.
I can't tell you how much exactly it would be, but that is determined by the state.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
By the way, thank you so much for this workshop.
It's my pleasure.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any questions? Because if not, I'm going to have some questions for you guys.
Oh, can I add something?
Sure.
So this is Vanessa. I am 65 years old, and one of the things I highly recommend, because as you know, many of us are reaching the late 50s, the 60s, and even the 70s. I would check in with Social Security at the age of 62. And at Tamara, we can hear you, Tamara. Somebody help. There we go. Okay. Oh, 62. And at the age of 65. The reason why I say that is so that you can stay abreast on what will be required of you as you decide when you're going to collect your Social Security, whether that's SSD or SSI. Because as we get older, sometimes our mobility changes and we have to make different decisions, right?
Mhm.
So I found it really helpful to talk to a specialist. And I would even tell you to talk to 2 or 3 specialists to make sure they are giving you the same answer. Would you
Very
not agree,
important,
Sylvester?
very important point, Vanessa. I would encourage anybody who is going to the Social Security Administration for specific information that you not settle with that customer service representative that's at that window. You need to actually get in the back and talk to a retirement counselor or a disability counselor, because much of the misinformation out there about retirement and disability comes from those front desk individuals at the Social Security Administration. Not that they mean to do bad by us, but they just don't have the specific training they need to be able to answer many of our questions. Also, I would suggest for anybody on this call to go to myssa.gov and create your own Social Security account. You can then, once that account is created, you can go back and you can look over the life of your work career to see how much money you made every year. You can also see how much you will get if you retire at 62, if you retire at 65, if you retire at 70. And there's a graph there that will also allow you to see how much your payment increases the longer you stay out. Also, optimally, it's best if you can to work until you're 70. Because if you're able, and understand that everybody's not able to do that, then you get the maximum amount that you could ever get from Social Security. Also, one thing I did not say earlier is that once you reach your full retirement age, you can work and make as much money as you can, and that Social Security retirement benefit is not affected. But that is only true once you meet full retirement age. Does anybody else have a question? We got a silent group, Vanessa. So I have a question. Who's willing to come off mute and tell us at least one thing that you know now that you did not know going into this presentation?
I'll go. Good afternoon,
Thank you, Ms.
everyone.
Jen. Hi.
Hi, hey, Dada.
Hi.
Anyway, one of the many things that I learned that I didn't know before is in regards to individuals that are participating in HAPWA, that after 12 months, during their 12 months, there won't be an increase. And then that following year, I believe I heard there's a 50%
They'll count
increase.
50% of their earnings, yes.
50% of their earnings, yeah, is what is used to calculate. So that was really good and helpful information for me.
And then in year 3, they'll count all of their earnings toward their contribution.
Thank you.
And then we have a question in chat.
Okay.
And I can say this to you for you, is regarding Medicare for people with disabilities who work. Are there income requirements the individual has to meet?
No. So Say that again. I think I heard
Let
you
me
correct.
read it again. Regarding Medicare for people with disabilities who work. I'm assuming this is SSD. I hope the individual.
If it's Medicare, then it should be SSDI, yes.
Okay. Are there income requirements the individual has to meet?
So I'm assuming that that person, if they're working, they've already gone through their 9 months of trial work. They've gone through their 3-month grace period. They're no longer are receiving an SSDI cash payment, and no, there are not any income limits. However, that person would, in most cases, be responsible for paying that Medicare Part B premium, which in 2023 is $164.90. And for 2024, it's going to go to about $174.70. Does that answer the person's question?
I hope so. Put a thumbs up for the one who put the question out there.
Yes. Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Any other questions, or anyone else who would be willing to come off mute and share with the group something that you know now that you did not know going into this presentation? I know it was a lot.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Hi, this is Alejandro from Minnesota. And something that I didn't know, thank you, Vanessa, and hello. Thank you for sharing, to keep an eye, you know. I just turned 50, so it's good to know that once I reach 62, 65, that I need to be making those phone calls, you know. So that's something good, because you don't think about this. You know, I never even thought about retirement at one point until I started working for a county here. And so those are things that we don't think about, you know. So
right.
Thank you so much for reminding that once I reach that age, I'm hoping to work until I'm 70, you know, but it's good to be planning ahead.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I also plan to work until I'm 70. I got 2 more years trying to hold out. Thank you for your comment.
Hey.
I'll work till 70 if they'll have me.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Alejandro.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to share?
Is there any other additional information regarding your own situation or somebody else's situation you may know about that you want to ask Sylvester about? Was there something else on your mind in terms of work or moving off a disability to work? Or if you're working, how do you go back on to disability? This is the time to ask while we have him. And
I
you
would
can
just like to
chat.
ask,
Oh, go.
I would like to ask a question. Sylvester, the way the laws have changed for retirement and Social Security.
You can talk into the mic, Danny, because you're fading in and out.
Okay, the way that the laws have changed for Social Security, do you think, like, by the young man that just questioned, who just turned 50, he's got 20 years to go till 70. Do you think that the retirement age will be pushed even further back?
With the way the climate is going, this is not a professional opinion. This is my personal opinion. I do think it will be. I do think it will be pushed back past 67. Yes, because you know, for so many years it was 65, and they gradually start pushing it back. So I do believe that by the time he's able to do that, yeah, it will have been pushed back some. I do believe that.
Oh, and this brings up the advocacy point. I know when you reach 50, you're like, why are they sending me that AARP card? I understand. I was a little bit touched myself, but please become a member. That is a powerhouse of an organization, and they're there to protect us. They push back as much as they can to ensure they're not going to try to make us work till 90. Okay.
Yeah. And one more thing I do want. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, don't hate on that card, because you can get discounts. You cutting and saving money, so don't hate on that card now.
That's right.
And that is for people, whether you are working on disability or not. When you turn 50, regardless, you will get that card.
One other thing I'd like to share, I understand that working is not for everybody, right? Because all of us are not in a medical or mental state to go back to work. But however, as Vanessa and Mark and I travel across the country and we do these webinars, we see so many of our brothers and sisters who are living in poverty unnecessarily. Many times because they don't have the kind of information that we shared today to be able to make well-informed decisions about going to work, because there's a lot of bad information out there. People say, you know, people tell you if you make $1,000 a month, you're going to lose your check. If you work 20 hours a month, you're going to lose your money. I would just encourage anybody who's on disability, who's even contemplating going back to work, to really, really take a look at the information that I shared today. These slides will be available. And there's also, there's WIPA programs across the country. That's the Work Incentive and Planning Assistance Program, which will provide you with information if you're contemplating work on exactly how going back to work will affect your benefits. We got about 8 more minutes, I believe, as scheduled. Is there anything else anybody else would like to share? Anything good, bad, or indifferent about the presentation that anybody would want to share?
I
Well,
just want to thank you
ahead.
so. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for taking the time to present this so pricelessly valuable information. It's very helpful for me as a 52-year-old individual that's aging, as well as all of the others that I do work with. And, you know, so this is very useful information. Thank you. And I hope you guys do this again.
It has been my pleasure to be able to do this, because like I said, there is so much bad information. I have the awesome opportunity to be a part of a wonderful team of people. Mark Misrock, our executive director, Martha Cameron, our deputy director, who many of you know, Heather O'Connor, who is our communication specialist, and of course, our beautiful, wonderful, my dear friend, board chair, Vanessa Johnson. She also travels with us sometimes to make these presentations. And no matter where we go, people really, really, this information gives them a new look at what the possibilities are. So on behalf of everybody at NWPC, I'd like to thank Shauna and Vanessa and everybody at Ribbon for the opportunity to come on today and share this information with you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, thank you all for attending. We are not going to belabor the point. We're going to give you back 5 minutes because we know time is precious.
Yes.
But know that you will get the slides, and Sylvester's contact information will be on those slides. And someone asked, will get it, if you can get a copy of the recording? Yes.
That will be sent out tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you, Shauna. Shauna, you want to close us out? Come on now.
Sure. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you for your engagement. On behalf of Ribbon, we'll also like to thank our co-partner in this, National Working Positive Coalition, and this wonderful presentation facilitated by Sylvester Askins. If you all have any questions, Sylvester, did you provide any contact information for your organization?
You know
Are you
what?
able to put that in the chat?
I will put it in the chat in just a moment. If people will hold on just a second. And for anybody that misses it, Shauna, please feel free to share it with anybody that may want it.
Okay. Sounds good. Do we have any closing comments, questions, thoughts? All right. As Vanessa said, here's the 5 minutes of your time, and we'll be in contact with the replay, the link to watch the replay of today's webinar on tomorrow. We ask you also to share the link, if you could, with your colleagues, peers, and others who may find this information beneficial. And with that, we bid you all adieu, and we wish you to have a great rest of your day. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Bye,
Good evening.
everyone. Sylvester,
Bye.
stay on for a minute.
I will.